times I've tried to tell you, many times I've cried alone. Always I'm surprised how well you cut my feelings to the bone. Don't wanna leave you really, I've invested too much time to give you up that easy, to the doubts that complicate your mind. We belong to the light, we belong to the thunder, we belong to the sound of the words we've both fallen under.
Do you think we should just do our like bits of like our Daleco accents like up front and just say wudder and hoagie a bunch?
Yeah, sure. Okay. Yeah, why not?
I think those are about my only two that I've got. I can do wudder and I can do hoagies.
She was pronounced, but I honestly, even that I thought we got overplayed because people were just kind of looking for a thing to, to joke about with the show.
It's fun. It's one of those things that it's like it's a new voice that kind of anybody can do a passable imitation of, but it's not something that has been done to death. So that's like the Nolan Batman movies are lousy with this because everybody can kind of do a Bane voice without like needing to be a voice actor. I guess because the cadence is so silly and recognizable.
Even Tom Wilkinson is got a hilarious accent in those movies.
Yeah, but I was thinking of the big three, the Bane and then Batman, and the Joker doing his sort of young Tom Waits thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, anyways, this year's framework. I'm Al. That's John.
Hey there.
And we're gonna talk about Mare, Easttown, which ended last weekend. What overall? What do you think? Thumbs up, thumbs down?
Thumbs up. Mostly a big thumbs up. I thought it was very good.
Me too. I got a couple nitpicks here and there.
Sure.
Maybe there's like half a twist piled on too many at the end. But I kind of like all of the bits individually. I mean, if I had one big complaint, I guess it's not even that big, but just some of the stuff with the high school kids.
Oh, is the worst part of the show. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just a little like red herring-ish for no particular reason.
What was that guy's? Where'd he go? The guy left in the middle of the night to go somewhere. What was he doing? Yeah, we never found out.
I guess he just wanted to get away from his girlfriend, who was kind of a C-word.
I guess. I mean, they don't care to tell us. That's for sure.
But then they're being sort of just like needlessly sinister about their decision to like steal the journals and burn them or whatever. Like it kind of makes sense in the end when you figure it out. Like I don't know where that third kid came into it.
That's right. There was a third kid for no reason. Just muscle, I guess. Yeah. Okay. That stuff was bad. That was the only stuff that I thought stood out as like, oh, this is not good.
Yeah, I'm throwing that out there to get out of the way because that's the only part that I can complain about without saying like it. But
and really, it was only bad in retrospect when you realized it amounted to nothing.
Yeah, and but that's a thing that happens with mysteries a lot.
Yeah.
Maybe that was the show at its most Twin Peaks, where, if you watch the first season of Twin Peaks, there's like everybody in the town is sort of acting that like doing that sort of needlessly suspicious stuff when nobody but the camera is looking.
Yeah.
Just acting super guilty.
As you watch Twin Peaks, you realize that they're all just really weird, messed up, like not real people.
Exactly. They're soap opera parody people in a lot of senses. And that's not what Mare of Easttown was. Mare of Easttown is way more slice of life, trying to be as authentic as possible.
And I mean, this is a good example of a show where I have no context of, the actual authenticity of what they're presenting, but feels very authentic nonetheless.
Yeah. I almost don't care about authenticity that much because I'm probably never gonna visit Delaware County and like see if they got, the name of the place that has the best cheesesteaks, right, or whatever. Or like compare the accents. But it felt lived in, which is more important.
Yeah, I mean, this is like it is world building in the sense of like I don't know, like a Game of Thrones kind of thing. That's just doing a fictional world. This is establishing the same kind of stuff for something that is, is real or feels real at any rate. That this area has its own customs, its own accent, and its own economic realities, I guess, would be the main thing. That is established over the course of the show and feels authentic. And that's
and
why
cultural realities too. Like with Game of Thrones, even like it,
Mhm.
You can lift it from just European history. A lot of it, it's like, well, we got this last, kingdom we haven't really explored yet, and what does it? It's sort of like the Spain. That's so the Dornish people are all going to have Spanish accents, and their architecture is going to be sort of Spanish, and
Yeah.
you can shorthand that, and then just slap a coat of the fantasy paint on it, and it goes a long way. But it just allows you to sketch that stuff in pretty quickly.
This is sort of thinking back, this is HBO's, like, one of their main strengths for developing shows. This seems like something they're always able to do. Like going back to, I don't know, the first HBO shows, stuff like Oz.
Yeah.
And certainly, I don't know, Sopranos, Deadwood, and The Wire, everything along there. This, Game of Thrones, of course, even up into stuff like Watchmen. All the shows they do really go in on world building, and it really works. They've kind of defined how to do it for shows. I think Breaking Bad is a show that's kind of taken the HBO model of world building.
Yeah, although the world of Breaking Bad is much more narrow in its focus. I think The Sopranos is a great counterpoint there, where it's much like Mare in that, I have no idea. I've never actually met a New Jersey gangster, but the sort of community that it builds up throughout its run, like it feels very authentic, or not authentic, but just believable that these people are in this area, and they are sort of stuck with each other, and they interact in this way with each other, and they have all these interconnections in a way that feels lived in.
As a resident of the tri-state area, yeah, they nailed that. They got that one real good. That's spot on, I'm sure.
Well, from what I gather from resident people of the greater Philadelphia area, they all seem kind of tickled at how well they actually did nail that. Haven't heard a lot of complaints.
Yeah, the accents got a lot of attention. People, loved that Kate Winslet was doing this Philly accent. For me, they faded into the background so fast, and it just became part of the tapestry of the show. I mean, I think she nailed it. I think she nailed the accent. I think most of them nailed the accent. It wasn't a thing for me. I mean, beyond just, it's kind of fun to do. But
this is the thing with real accents, though. People I know that it's it fades in the word really quickly. Except then occasionally there's like certain words where it just leaps back out, and it hits your head and it reminds you. Like I don't know. In my personal life, it's just I know a lot of people from St. Louis, and the St. Louis accent's not very strong, but there's just like a certain vowel sound that pops out in certain words, and they're infrequent enough that it surprises me. And that in the later run of Mare, that I would stop noticing it entirely until somebody said hewgie, or whatever the word was. Wudder, I guess, is the easy one.
They
but
found
anyway,
her in the water. Yeah.
We talked a lot about accents so far. I want to talk to us. So, I have a specific angle on this that I want to bounce off you. And so, when you think of this show, we talked about Twin Peaks earlier, and that is sort of a one type of like murder mystery show, murder mystery in a small town.
Yeah.
Do you think of that? You think of Mare primarily in that lineage, right?
I don't actually, because Twin Peaks has so much going on. I mean, Twin Peaks is, a horror story about dimensions, and it is so surreal and bizarre. And yes, I mean, there is a lot of similar stuff. There's a detective, there's a corpse, it's a teenage girl. She was having sex with people, and we didn't know about it. And, a small, tightly knit community, a lot of obvious signifiers, but I don't know. I mean, there's so many other shows that are doing that without the surreal stuff.
Right, you're right. Twin Peaks is it's a bad example because it has all that crazy David Lynch shit layered on top of it. But that's what when you think of Mare, it's more the broad church lineage, I guess.
Yes,
the killing, even
the killing.
True Detective.
I don't know what the first show to do that was. Yeah, top of the lake.
Happy
There's
Valley.
literally dozens of them. I mean,
Mhm.
you can pop open Netflix and you'll find like probably 13 of these from Ireland alone. That have come out
Yeah.
in the last 4 years. They're
It's probably
great.
got its own. It probably has its own like channel on Netflix, or like genre.
Yeah,
They
got
how they
to.
break them down, dice them up
Uh-huh.
pretty fine
Yeah,
on
I
there.
mean, I'm sure my mother has watched most of them. Like
Yeah,
these are very popular right now.
and this
I'm
is a good
kind of
example of that.
surprised. Yeah, it really is. I'm surprised it hit so hard. Like it seems like everyone's talking about this show and everyone was very into it and watched it. When it's just, I mean, besides being really good, it's kind of just the one that came out this season. Like there'll be another one next season. There, I think we talked briefly about how this basically could just be a season of True Detective. Like there's almost no difference.
Yeah, it seemed like it should have just been called True Detective season 4. Really, I mean,
there'd be nothing that. I mean, the only reason it wasn't is because that guy Nick Pizzolaruzzo, if that's his name, I something like that. I think all True Detective means is that he wrote it, is from what I can tell. Because otherwise, this is a True Detective season.
yeah. I think this is probably always going to be kind of a bigger one because it's the one that got Kate Winslet.
I guess so. Yeah, I don't know. It
so,
seemed to me that she's been kind of on the decline lately. I can't think of a thing she's done since winning the Oscar for The Reader, which is like, I don't know, 5 years ago, something like that. I don't know what she's done in that time, other than like some small movies. I think she
I would have
played.
said that was like 10 years ago.
I mean, it's been a little while, and no one saw.
Who
that.
knows, and who could ever Google it?
It's a mystery that you would need a mayor of Easttown to solve.
We need a committed detective to really unravel this over a series of weeks.
Yes, and it would reflect on her life as well in shocking and cathartic ways. But yeah, like she hasn't been in the public eye. I mean, she played like a villain in the Divergent series, I believe.
She did?
Yeah. Or so, like one of the adults who's just like, no, you young people can't think for yourselves. You have to follow the way things are supposed to be. Like that was her role in that.
I mean, I suppose the thing with those types of series is you really want to get like an an overachiever like thespian for that role. The Hunger Games wants to get Donald Sutherland for it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was she was in a Hunger Games knockoff as one of the bad guys. That's the kind of stuff she's been doing lately, and it kind of made me forget about her. I guess.
I suppose. I mean, nothing. I mean, it's a knock. I think she could have rested on the laurels of Titanic and Eternal Sunshine, and pretty marvelous turn on the first episode of Ricky Gervais' Extras series.
That is the thing, though. Like Mare of Easttown, if nothing else, was a stark reminder of how good she is, like of how excellent she is. Like one of the best right now. She's fantastic, and we are less for her not doing movies as much anymore, or doing Divergent movies or whatever she's spending time on. I'm not sure what she's got going on, but it has kept her out of major motion pictures, or I mean, that doesn't even matter anymore. I think doing a show like this is pretty high profile and great too. So I'm glad she's back.
She could have done a bunch of stuff in like British TV too, for all we know. Doesn't. I mean,
yeah, I'm sure there's things I'm just not thinking of, but
it's fine. Before we move on from the cast, let's throw out a couple extra laurels there that I want to point out that everybody on this was just crushing it pretty much at every turn. And especially Jean Smart and Julianne Nicholson, who played Laurie. Man,
Jean Smart,
she was great.
Oh well, yeah. I mean, I wasn't quite clear what that character was all about and why she was so featured until the last few episodes, of course. But yeah, she really pulled it out in the nose. And Jean Smart, my God, what a good actress. What a fantastic late in life renaissance that she's had on TV.
Is it Legion that jump started it for her? Like this last 5 years where suddenly
I think it was Fargo. Season 2.
What? Oh yeah, Fargo season 2 was before Legion. That's right.
Noah Hawley as well, but
yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she was so good on Fargo season 2. I feel bad for not going there immediately, but also one of the better things about the Watchmen series.
Big time.
I don't know if you had a chance to watch the Hacks show that they just dropped on HBO Max.
Oh, right.
She's playing like Rita Rudner, basically.
No, I forgot that she has her own show going on at the same time right now. Yeah, I
Yeah,
have
yeah.
not
My
watched
wife and I were watching two Gene Smart shows on HBO at the same time, and we have a newborn baby. We're not watching that much TV, but Gene Smart really locked down our corner
She's
this
so good
last
in
month.
Mare of Easttown. She's so funny, and she's playing a character very much not like these other roles she's played. Like the Midwestern crime boss or the retired superhero working for the government. These are like hard ass roles. She's playing sort of just sort of an old lady, a goofy old lady without a lot of dignity in Mare of Easttown, and she's nailing it and imbuing her with dignity and just gravitas and a lot of comedy bits that she's killing.
Well,
It's she's awesome in this.
honestly, it's not even. I think she's avoiding the gravitas in just the right way. Of it seems like okay, we have this sort of established elder statesman actor type for this, and so it might like mark out that character as okay, she's going to have like her powerhouse seed, and she's going to blah blah. But for which she kind of does in the finale, but it's still not like a. I mean, it's kind of showy, but it's not the character kind of like throwing her weight around or anything.
Yeah, there's no dramatic thing that is like hinging on her. Like she's
Right.
can always supply support for whatever Mare's going through or whatever the scene requires. But for the most part, the scenes I remember her doing are like she falls off of a chair and yells "fuck," like that's the sort of
Yeah.
stuff that she's doing in this show, and
She just makes Guy Pearce a little uncomfortable. And it's,
Guy Pearce, by the way,
yeah, what the hell is he doing there?
what I like that though. Well, no, I don't know if I like it, but I definitely like that he wasn't the killer, which
Yeah,
Ebert's
but
law of economy. I think we talked about this recently. That's he should be the killer or something, and the fact that he isn't is kind of great. That he's just a guy. He's just sort of a
that's
hot guy who's dating Kate Winslet.
that's honestly so. I told my wife as I was passing off her infant child to her, like uh, that we were recording about Mare of Easttown. She's like, "Oh, are you just doing this so you can brag about how you called it early on?" Um, and
you called this?
I
Wow.
didn't. No, well, I almost called it basically that early on, like when this is like back when Frank, Mayor's ex-husband, was sort of just fingered as
Hmm.
the suspect. It's like dun dun dun, and I was saying, well, no, I think we're probably heading for the twist that like Lori was the one who did it to cover up for her husband, who's another bearded guy
Hmm.
that could have mistaken for him. Um, and I was basing that just entirely on Ebert's economy of characters. Where it's like it's got to be somebody who's very close to Mare and who is played by a bigger acting actor. Not
Right.
that Julia Nicholson's like super well known, but she is respected um, and seemed to be like more talent than you need for just the plucky best friend role.
Right.
But mainly it was just that it has to be what's the biggest twist we can throw here that's still like plausible, and it's that she's trying to cover it up to save her family. Turns out it's not her, it's her son, and they're kind of covering up for him. But it was close enough to the mark that my wife thought I was doing this just to brag about that. But that's not why I was doing it. I was doing it because I have this other take on the show that I wanted to bounce off of you, which is that is this where it's easy to put this in that broad church, Happy Valley, top of the lake lineage, but I'm a little surprised. Should we be viewing this as more of like a renegade cop show? Is
Hmm.
Mare like Vic Mackey for 2021?
I mean, no. Like,
Well, see, I think that the show and the audience and all the characters in the show seem to let Mare off the hook super duper easy for this horrendous violation uh, of her duties as a police officer and a human being when she tries to destroy the life of uh, her not I guess not daughter-in-law because her son wasn't married to her, but the mother of her grandson. Um, and that to me like jumped down like, oh wow, like I thought this was going to be a different type of show, and then at the end of that episode I was like, wait, is this a show about how she's a terrible cop? And then turns out, no, it's not that. It really is the type of
No,
show
no, it's
that it
about how
seemed to be
she's
the
a
first
good guy.
time. But it seemed like a huge thing to like move fast as quickly as the show does. Um, and so I'm wondering if I'm the only one who thinks this. Also, I just think it's an interesting thing to look at here. So, did it never occur to you that Mare was like a rogue cop, or that needed to face consequences for that? Really?
Um, it's interesting you say that, because no, the answer is no, it did not. The it is, in retrospect, I am a little curious about why that is, because yeah, now that I think about that as it played out, it's definitely a massive Vic Mackey-esque violation, and probably grounds for dismissal and probably prosecution.
Well,
So
it
yeah,
absolutely should
yeah.
be. But
um,
I mean, it's not that I find it unbelievable that like the
mhm,
captain chose to sweep it under the rug rather than like
of
actually deal
course,
with it.
yeah.
And even like in the finale, I guess I was a little surprised that like the mother that she did this to was like so easily forgiving her. I buy that everybody else in her life and in the show was not like that put off by it.
Hmm.
But
Well, I mean, even I wasn't. Well, as an audience member,
right,
I was just like, yeah, fucking good idea. I mean, you don't even find out it happened until it blows up, of course.
yeah,
But I did not hold it against her, because I was emotionally with Mare and not with the drug addict daughter, or grand, what, I don't know what she is. What was the character's name? That'll help.
we can just
Uh,
call it daughter-in-law. Carrie is her name, but we can call
Carrie.
it daughter-in-law
Okay.
for all it
Yeah.
matters.
Uh-huh. There was that flashback of the son and Carrie breaking in and hitting her
Yeah.
and stealing her money and stuff. And after that, I was like, oh yeah, you do whatever. I don't care about this person.
So,
Like, they emotionally manipulated me into not giving shit about massive, massive police corruption, I guess. Yeah.
but
Not massive.
what strikes me about it, it's not massive, but it is like especially egregious because it's like it's even worse in a lot of ways than like the Vic Mackey stuff, because the Vic Mackey's whole thing was usually, or their standard renegade cop, that there's
Yeah.
been a million of. Um,
Yeah. Beat people up, steal money from drug dealers, and yeah. Uh-huh.
yeah, or they're crossing the line to get the bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And steal
but that,
money.
yeah. Vic Mackey
Yeah.
blurs those lines because he was also like lying in his pockets while he did it. But it was also like when he made his like a lot of his biggest moves, it was like or he'd plant evidence. It would be on somebody who was clearly bad. The Shield
Yeah.
created monsters that he was up against, which I think was part of the point. There is, helps us sort of justify it in the same way that real bad cops do justify things. They think, well, I'm doing this to criminals, and I'm a cop, so even though I'm breaking the law too, it's for a
Mm-hmm.
better reason, and that's okay.
Yeah, he
But
becomes a monster to fight monsters, kind of thing.
right.
Mm-hmm.
But Dirty Harry wasn't going around shooting his in-laws just because they pissed him off, and she wasn't like crossing lines to solve the case, which we're totally behind her on, like or anything. This was purely she used her position as a police officer to completely fabricate evidence against somebody she knew was innocent.
Yeah, as a
And
mother
not,
trying to get her child back.
yeah, and purely for like personal gain, like for
Mm-hmm.
something. It was not related to the job at all. Like the renegade detective archetype is often going too far in service of the job, and this was completely outside of that. So in a way, I think that makes it a lot worse. Really,
I mean, I don't know that it's such a slippery slope when you say, well, it's better when it's in pursuit of true justice. It becomes that's how you end up with a Vic Mackey. But
yeah.
I mean, like I say, I it didn't even clock to me that Mare was doing something completely unsympathetic and with without. Well, what it was I was with her on doing it because I didn't want the grandson to go with the drug addict mother, Carrie. I didn't trust her. I
didn't either, but I didn't think that like the kid
Yeah.
would be in real danger with her or anything. Like,
it really does go out of its way to exonerate her. I mean, to the point of saying, yeah, and ultimately, the mother, Carrie, did go back to drugs and was not a fit mother. And the best thing was for that grandson to stay with Mare, for sure.
But she, I mean, who's to say that she wasn't part of like the stress of being framed for this while she was in recovery didn't help push her back along that line.
I mean, the show
who's to
wouldn't
say?
say
I
that,
guess,
right?
yeah, as the show says that pretty directly, and I mean, lays it on thick even at the end that it has Siobhan in the last episode, who is sort of like the voice of reason and grace within this framework. Tell Mare in exactly as many words, Easttown's a better place with you in it.
Yeah.
And I've been surprised in 2021 to have not seen more pushback against that sentiment, that a dirty cop who's willing to use their position to further their own personal ends extra legally is actually like a net positive. And so like I was curious right after that episode happened. I was very interested all of a sudden to be like, okay, I'm kind of wondering how like people are gonna respond to this. And so I went over to check out the comments of the AV Club, which are, you know, it's a site and a community that's pretty proudly like progressive and
Yeah, performatively woke, if you were being ungenerous. Yes.
yeah, I mean, but I'm trying. I'm not trying to be. I'm trying to
Be
do it
generous.
as a
Yeah, of course.
the most neutral descriptor I can. But the people who I was like I was curious to see how like they would respond to this. So they probably latched on initially as, oh, this is strong female character, and that's something that we are supportive of. And we like to see it's got these production values. It's got Kate Winslet. There's obvious quality here. We're going to be behind that. But also that same community would be, tend a little more towards the ACAB crowd.
Of course.
And I thought they might be a lot more unforgiving of police misconduct in, today's climate. And I was interested to see how that sort of interacted with each other. And from what I gleaned there, it seemed like, nobody was really bothered by it. They started on her side and kind of stayed on her side, like you said, that like you went through. And that was really interesting to me. And it ultimately, actually, in the finale, something like clicked for me there. That when the finale takes a turn, or I mean, it takes several turns, but thematically, where it becomes a little clearer that the show is kind of ultimately about the value of like kindness and forgiveness. And in the face of some of these darker things that have been going on throughout the season, but it's not as cynical or as bleak as some of the earlier episodes could have led you to believe, and it leaves you in kind of a hopeful, uplifting place. And I thought maybe that's the thing here, is that the female version of a renegade cop is different than the male version, I guess. And that it's not about retribution. It's not about the Vic Mackey thing of you're fighting a monster and she's crossing these lines to get the monster. And the criticism of the Shield or Dirty Harry or whatever is that it sort of excuses all this wrongdoing by saying, but in the end they take down the bigger evil.
Yeah, they get results.
So, yeah, and so the lesser evil is acceptable on those terms. And what I think Mare of Easttown ended up saying in the finale, at least to me, was that we all fuck up, and nobody's blameless, and we need to learn to be kind to each other and ourselves about our misdeeds, even.
I like that. I like that very much. It's I don't know if I'd quibble with that. I think that's a pretty astute reading. I may be a little generous to it. I mean, there's so much weird shit going on and so many plots getting resolved or unresolved in the case of the teens that finding a thematic thread to this. I mean, it's tough, and it really, for me, the stuff with what you'll do for your kids and what it's like to lose a kid and how to live in the shadow of that kind of overshadowed everything else going on in the finale. And that was sort of, finding the parody between Mare's dead son and
and Lori losing
Lori
losing
losing her son somewhat, sort of, losing her son basically. That was sort of that was the thing I was thinking about on the way out. Like that was that, and it's melancholy, or bittersweet maybe. There's good and bad, and that's life kind of thing.
Well, it definitely wants to leave you on a hopeful note with that last bit of Mare going into the attic.
Totally, totally, of course. Mm-hmm.
But the other stuff is that, I mean, I don't think I'm just bringing out all the rest of it myself, because they do have that extended scene of the deacon returning to the church and giving his sermon about like laying all that stuff out. And basically,
which I don't know if I agreed with either. I was kind of like, I don't know if I want him back.
Well, I mean, there's a logistical question there of, we found out he's totally sort of innocent as far as Aaron McMiniman's death goes. He had something in his background that we never got details on.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if we're supposed to take away that he was actually innocent of that too, or
I don't think so.
But in any case, I thought it was interesting in 2021 to put like that sort of moral thesis statement of the show in the mouth of a Catholic priest, which is, I was raised Catholic, but
yeah,
it's been a rough decade or so for the church.
Yes, to say the least. But he was a bad priest, probably, as far as we know. We didn't get the full details on it. I mean, I don't know. That all struck me as kind of like red herring stuff in the end. Like it was there to be that, but yeah, like he did shit. He lied to the cops about it. He threw the bicycle into the river. All that stuff. He didn't need an apology from Mare at the end. Like I didn't need her to say, "I'm really sorry about how you've been treated by this town." I was like, I don't know if I'm down with this guy's reclamation per se.
I mean, I think he did. I mean, I think Carrie needed one much more, and I was kind of surprised that even at the end, when Carrie was handing over custody, that she didn't apologize to her.
I didn't Carrie apologize to her? I mean,
yeah, I mean, like, it was closer to anyway.
Yeah.
But no, I do think. I mean, you imprison somebody for a crime they didn't commit. I think you give them an apology on the way home. And, maybe a donut if you have.
Sorry about that falsified evidence thing. Yeah.
Well, they didn't falsify evidence against the priest there.
No, he did his thing. Yeah,
he did spend time in prison for a crime he did not commit and was assaulted over it. And despite not having committed it, will probably have a tough time living that down. Like
clearly, yeah,
a cloud of that sticks to each other, or sticks to you no matter what. I think, but I think that's. I mean, and I don't know. This also is the stuff that resonates with me more in 2021, I guess, because I do think that one of like the central cultural issues for us these days is having lost track of, I guess, the value of forgiveness. And I think that's, I mean, it's a complicated thing, but it has to do with the rise of the internet and social media and how you, get cancel culture, however you define that. But I think broadly speaking that it's fallen out of fashion. That now accountability is the thing that we are more obsessed with, at least, especially on the internet. And I think it's just natural evolution of things. And maybe one of the next steps down the line is going to be sort of rediscovering the value of the forgiveness as a virtue and the importance of providing like rehabilitation as a possibility.
It's interesting to me that, I mean, you're explaining this, and this is something that had not really struck me watching the show. I mean, I was kind of, taken by it, of course. I was watching it a bit more passively than some other shows I've watched, to be fair. But at the same time, I mean, I found it had thematic ideas that were landing and that I was respecting of those, like everything involving what was going on with Evan Peters' character really struck me in his final episode. Like that seemed really, really intelligently communicated, and every small interaction he was having with Kate Winslet was really impactful by the end there. But I don't know. I like what you're saying, and it's clearly there. I do feel like it is a bit at odds with the structure of a murder mystery show where the question is like, who did it, who did the thing, who's the killer. And well, no, I mean, I'm talking this out now, in real time, because it's not like a force of evil in the world that must be confronted, like in True Detective season 1 or so many of these shows.
Twin Peaks is what I was going to say, but
yeah, well, quite literally in that case, like it
super
doesn't have
in that sense.
Yeah, it doesn't have the the evil serial killer mastermind who's well, he does have that actually. Now that that other guy.
Yeah, this is the other thing that I meant to mention earlier when we were talking about more plot stuff. But is it super weird that this is a detective show that has a like serial killer monster that is like a red herring?
Yeah,
to the like central mystery.
Right. But let me finish my thought, because it ultimately, though, it's not about that. It is about people got excited and something got out of hand, and it was an accident. And how guilty is this kid really? How guilty can a 10-year-old even be of committing a murder? It's
well, he's 13, but
13. Okay. Well, yeah, but the point is he's a child, and it's an accident. No, at the end of the day, and it's because people fucked up, repeatedly, and tried to fix that fuck up without people knowing, and just over and over, and the worst result happened, and it's human frailty and nature, and not like a literal force of evil in the world,
that fits into everything I was saying, I think, because
yes, exactly.
It turns out there isn't a monster that needs to be like just slain at the end of this of that murder. There was a dragon in the
there was a different one,
like red herring thing. But when it comes to Aaron's death, which is the central mystery of the show, there is no monster that needs to be destroyed there, and it becomes a question of, well, how useful are these retributive impulses in this case? But I think what it ends up happening is you get to the point where you can say, okay, like, maybe this one member of the family deserves the most blame, but does it really behoove anybody or the larger community to be destroying that entire family? Like, does throwing the book at this 13-year-old boy help anybody? Does it when Lori or his Uncle Billy get sucked in just to try and cover up for him, does bringing them down with him do anybody any good?
It strikes me that there's grounds to pretty much imprison everybody in that entire family, within the bounds of the law at this point.
There are, and I really,
you don't get the sense they're pursuing that, except probably with John Ross, but and of course the kid, but
but
it's
I think
still a destroyed family. Yeah.
Oh no, it absolutely. Yeah, they're still wrecked by that for the rest of their lives. Which, if I'm trying to tie this into the larger like topic of cancel culture, I guess the line I hear there a lot is that a lot of people love to say that, oh, cancel culture isn't a real thing, even, and I think that's kind of not nonsense, because after that they usually follow it up with two things simultaneously, which is it's not a real thing because X person so and so did a thing and they are still like out there in the world, and they are not actually dead, and they didn't actually lose like everything in their life. They're not in jail. That seems like kind of missing the point. But then in the same breath, the person who's saying that cancel culture isn't a real thing often likes to say that actually it's just consequences reaching people, and so we're trying to say it's both not a real thing and also a good thing if you think about it. And I think the problem is more that cancel culture means like 50 different things to different people, depending on what time of day it is and who's the person being targeted.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess the problem is that you can say, like, oh, that like that person didn't go to jail, or that didn't affect that person really at all, except that like this family, even if Ryan, the boy, gets out when he's 18 years old, and Lori doesn't actually go to jail, and they make a point to say that Uncle Billy is going to be paroled after 6 months or something.
Yeah, and John's crimes are like lying to the police at this point. That's about it. I mean,
Yeah,
I guess
maybe.
they
Well, there
give him
might
for
be a statutory case of
maybe
some sort.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I'm not sure. Yeah, what, but their lives are still like completely wrecked by this. Like
Yeah.
the next 30 years of all of their lives are defined by this
Yeah.
incident.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it's not. I don't think it's accurate to say that even if they escape legal punishment, that they skated away, unaffected by it.
They don't escape legal punishment either. Yeah.
No, they make kind of a point of that they don't.
Yeah.
But you can make a more credible case that in some when it gets to like some sort of upper level white collar criminals can skate on it and not see their lives changed that much. But for most people, being publicly accused of a crime, uh, even if you're ultimately exonerated, that still gets like carried with you. Especially if you're not exonerated, but you're just not imprisoned.
Right.
That still
Yeah.
it still defines what everybody thinks of you going forward, and that matters a ton, I think.
And now more than ever. I mean,
Yeah.
it seems like a very bad time to be, guilty of something.
Right.
Relative to other times in history, I guess.
I mean, hell, you were talking about how you still hadn't forgiven the priest who was exonerated by the show.
Yeah, it's a thing, right? It's not really what the show's about, but it's there. I mean, it's interesting. We were talking about all cops are bastards. It's this is kind of instructive in that I think that like you could say maybe like, are we going to maybe enter into a phase now where we're not doing cop movies, where we're not going to make heroes of these characters, because even the dirty cop movies have hero cops,
Yeah.
They're about the good cops, that's an incredibly old trope, even a movie very critical of cops is going to be. Spike Lee made a movie about hero cops a few years ago, for God's sakes. It's
yeah.
I guess so that I'm just saying that is not going anywhere. Like, we're not going to enter into a phase of all cops are bastards movies. They're going to be bad guys maybe in some low budget kind of action movie styles, but for the most part, we're too in love with our cops to ever really view them as bad guys, I think.
Well, I don't know. I mean, maybe that's true. I would have said prior to the last month that had kind of fallen out of fashion, at least. Not that it was never going to come back, because I think these things all kind of do culturally. Like, there's not a lot of cultural corners we turn that we don't end up circling back to eventually. So, yeah, but I thought we had turned a corner here for the next, I don't know, couple years, that it was going to be a thing that making movies or shows that valorize cops, that especially cops that bend the rules to get the job done, would not be as popular. And this also, I think this was a thing that, well, it was delayed by the pandemic, so this is sort of a relic. I think this was written in like 2017 or 18, and
but all the same, I mean, you saw the discourse completely ignored that,
right?
Yeah.
And I thought that was very interesting.
That we're ingrained to really, deify these characters. We're and it makes sense. They're catching bad guys, narratively speaking. Like they're stopping the bad guy. That's their stated purpose, whether it's really like that or not. Yeah.
Maybe the serial killer red herring was something that was kind of unnecessary to this show, because it seemed kind of like the show going out of its way to like make sure that almost like they realized she had done something really terrible, and then needed to give her something super undeniably heroic to accomplish, like 2 episodes later, so that
Well,
I don't know if it was because they thought the audience needed to get back on board, but it got all the characters back on board with her. You know,
well, yes, but I mean, you could say that the planning of evidence plot line was unnecessary as well. I mean, these are all part of the fabric of the show, and I think what the ultimately where the show comes down on is that Mare is a complicated person with personal demons who bears some responsibility for the things that have happened in her life, but ultimately is a true detective and and a good person and the hero of Easttown. And I think that is ultimately where the show lands. Yeah, he's a complicated person, a very a character with good qualities and bad qualities. Basically what a good character is. When you're writing a good cop, this is how you do it essentially, and so yeah, I mean in that sense, I don't think they had the shield on their mind. I don't think they were talking about the institutional problems with police. Like, in fact, the police have no institutional problems in this show.
no, they don't.
What Mayor does is like a personal thing that is that using the power of the office, but instantly, I guess they do though. I guess they do because they cover it up so quickly.
Yeah, but the way the show presents it, there's no like net harm to anybody from any of that.
That's right. Yes,
Um,
they dismissed the drug charges on Carrie. Yeah,
and
quietly.
it's just no harm,
Yeah.
no foul. In
Yeah.
that case.
So,
And
that didn't happen. Yeah.
yeah, but I think I mean, you described that as like, yeah, she's a complicated character, and it leaves me with that impression, which I think is good, something I enjoy. I like again, I like the show, but I guess I was bringing it up to you because it's something I thought had kind of fallen out of vogue. That the
It'll never go out of vogue.
well, that I thought antiheroes defined prestige television so thoroughly for like the first 15 years, 10 to 15 years at least of this century.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would have told you that we kind of turned a corner on that especially I guess I would throw out Trump's election as being the marking point of where we really turned around and thought maybe we need to be a little harder on these like assholes that quote unquote get the job done, and maybe there's some negative consequences to dismissing misbehavior by these charismatic white men.
Maybe the artistry with which he creates that meth is not really that much of a point in his favor. Yeah.
No, I thought that played into something. Also, just the fact that genre or that style of storytelling was getting a little played out.
I agree. I think it was just kind of
so
like
many versions of it.
We'd seen a lot of it. Yeah. Would you consider this character, this show about an anti-hero? I don't really.
No, but I thought maybe that was the thing. Is that actually it turns out just making it a female anti-hero still was enough of a shakeup that it sort of takes us back to this earlier era where we are more willing to make allowances for complicated characters.
It is odd that just I do feel like there was a gap there that we didn't get a great female anti-hero out of that era when it seems like that would be an obvious thing to do. I mean, I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody, and there were quite a few partials in there.
I believe that's what Nurse Jackie was supposed to be, but I haven't seen that show, so I couldn't tell.
Yeah. I mean, there were definitely attempts at it, but none that really kind of hit the cultural zeitgeist in the way that Tony Soprano or Walter White did. I don't think Mare's
or Don Draper.
Yeah, right, exactly. I don't think Mare is an anti-hero, though. I think she is a good guy, a hero with shades of gray in there, but ultimately, a hero cop.
I guess I found it surprising how uncritically people seem to people who had explicitly rejected the anti-hero tropes and who are, I wouldn't think, also not primed to think well of police misconduct, were also willing to sort of uncritically accept that. And maybe that speaks to just how powerful that, protagonist identification thing is.
I think so. I think white women get a pass too, a little bit culturally. I think just a little, maybe. I don't know.
Perhaps.
I mean, they're getting their turn under the wheel with the Karen thing too, though. So there's
I mean, that's not what Mare is, though.
No, Mare is not a Karen. Um, but I mean, it's in a sense, it's the same thing as like, they try, they 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 give her the look and the feel of an anti-hero. They give her a foul mouth, and she vapes all the time, which I don't think is supposed to be virtuous, and a messed up family, and and personal baggage, and she's kind of a bitch sometimes. But I think
Yeah,
that
she's just
all
kind of
is,
curmudgeonly.
yeah. It's window dressing, I feel, and I ultimately think in the show that the planting of evidence falls into that window dressing category, which is a little weird. You're right. Um, I mean, it's the same as like how they tell us that she's kind of dressed down, like this is an unglamorous Kate Winslet in the show,
Mhm.
when clearly no, she's obviously still one of the most beautiful women in the world. It's ultimately she's a good cop. Ultimately she is the hero of a hero cop show. And I don't think that's a problem. I think that's good. I think they did a good job of creating Mare as a character. I think that there's room for that.
I mean,
You're right
yeah,
though. That I mean that planting of evidence thing really does kind of stick out as a bum note now that I'm thinking about it in these terms. That is weird that I just blazed through that and didn't think about that critically at all. That I was just like, yeah, fuck her. It was fine
I,
with me. That's fucked up.
I'm not
Wow.
even sure that it's a bum note for me because I think it's something one of the things that made the show most interesting to me. But yeah, it is weird. It seems like something in the show does not credit how big of a deal I think it is.
I mean,
Like the
even
show's missed it totally.
yeah, when when her chief is confronting her, he's just like, hey, yeah, I know, you're one who's worth saving. It's okay, but you're on leave. She doesn't even get fired. She's on leave,
Right.
which is. I mean, I think they try to make it sound like a big deal, but as an audience member, I know when a cop is on leave, that is a narrative development rather than something to
Right.
actually worry about. You know,
And then she's reinstated after she,
does
while
cop stuff.
on
Yeah.
leave,
Yeah.
does an unauthorized raid on someone's house that gets another officer killed.
Yeah,
Uh,
well, she got results, man. That's the thing.
well, yeah, but one of
Americans
the results is she got
results.
an officer killed. There's not really an indication that I think that those girls would have died if they had called in
Oh, they would have.
official. Like,
Yeah, he would have killed them. He was a serial killer
yeah,
guy.
maybe
Yeah.
maybe it wouldn't have. Yeah.
I mean, what else? He's not going to let him go.
Well, if they, I don't
That's
know. I mean, I don't know how it would have gone if they would, if she would have just passed it on to him and he like brought uniformed officers there instead of her. But anyway,
right. Sure.
um,
Well, I mean, they
yeah,
were doing the Silence of the Lambs thing. I mean, they were just like they're just checklist. Okay, there's a car here. They found themselves in the situation. It developed as they were there.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that's not something we're supposed to be critical of for her. I mean, it's Clarice Starling. I mean, that scene's
No,
really Silence of the Lambsy. Yeah.
yeah, oh, it's very
Yeah.
much so. And I wouldn't like it's again, it's not that I find it like unbelievable or silly that this stuff happened. I totally buy that. You know, every time a police officer does something horribly illegal, and then gets reinstated at their same job or moves one county over, gets a new job, it's because their chief pulls him aside and says, "Look, I know you're one of the ones we're saving," and like
It's
that's
like the
exactly how
Catholic
that goes
Church.
down. It just
Yeah. It's
yeah, exactly. Yep, Catholic Church same
institutional
way.
rot. Yeah. I mean, this is
Yep.
what The Wire was about too. This
Yep.
is. Oh man,
The
that
Wire was
show's.
aware of that corruption,
Yeah. Hmm.
but again, also it's something I almost don't care whether Mayor of Easttown, the show, came across this uh, intentionally or accidentally, but it does sort of hold up the corruption of the church, covering up those bad apples, and the corruption of police departments, covering up for their bad apples, and
It's almost more
like,
interesting if it's accidental, in a
yeah, I
sense.
think so.
It's kind of great. Yeah. That's this is great. This is a conversation where the show has increased in my estimation through no fault of its own. Just by having this conversation,
Yeah,
that's pretty cool. I like that. Yeah.
yeah, and I don't think that the show intended me to think of Mare in in like the
No,
lineage of
no, she's good.
Dirty Harry and Vic Mackey, but it's more
Mhm.
interesting for me to view her that way.
It's
I
almost
just
more interesting to view her that way when it is not intended by the show.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you could make an argument that it's actually making this super like hacky almost like gender commentary of like, well, when a man cop go colors beyond the lines is because they're so dedicated to their job, or they're just so uh, focused and intent on punishing the bad guy. And then, women be like this. And when women cops come outside the line, it's because they got too emotional about something in their personal life.
Well, I mean, that's always the way. I mean, that's how we code this stuff in films. I mean,
Yeah.
my favorite one is always the Air Force One thing, which,
I know
I'll
you're a
talk
big
about
fan.
Air Force One whenever I can. The Glenn Close vice president character, everyone's like, we can't let Harrison Ford still be president. He is a hostage of terrorists, so he actually can't be president anymore. And she is like, no, I still have faith in him. And everyone's like, that's because you're a woman, you're weak. You don't have the balls for this, Glenn Close. And ultimately, the way things work out, it's good that Glenn Close didn't, take power away from Harrison Ford. That was the right choice, but it was the wrong choice. It was definitely the incorrect choice in that situation, and it just happened to work out. And they Glenn Close did it in the film's logic because she's a woman, and hey, maybe that's what a woman brings to it, the wrong choice, and it works out sometimes. It's an insane movie. I'm sorry I talked about it. Well, during our Mare of Easttown podcast.
I'm not sure. I guess my point here is that Mare of Easttown's gender politics are not any more advanced than Air Force One's in this regard. I didn't think that's what I was saying, but no, it seems to be getting there.
But she's not a Vic Mackey. She's not she's not Alonzo Harris from Training Day. She's in the Dirty Harry lineage if she's in any of those. Dirty Harry would plant drugs on his.
But she is a bad cop. She's a dirty cop.
Yeah. But I think that she's a bad cop in a good way, like Dirty Harry, as opposed to a bad cop in a bad way, like Vic Mackey. I think.
Yeah. Well, this is how the bad apples survive.
People tell her over and over how good she is as a cop in the show.
Yeah, I know. And as a mother and a person, eventually, I
like her. I'm on her side all through this stuff is the thing. And if I watch it again, I'm sure I would be again.
Well, she has that super sympathetic backstory, that her family situation's so fucked up that you can't be mad at her. And she's not coming at it with any malice or anything.
And Carrie is not great, She's probably going to relapse anyway.
Well, she definitely is if you keep stealing heroin and sticking it in her vehicles. Although I would note, actually, in Carrie's defense, she does not relapse on heroin. She relapses on uppers.
Yeah, speed pills or something like that, I think.
Because
she falls asleep when that kid's taking a bath.
Mm-hmm.
That was actually not bad. I like that was... I always thought that was setting up something much worse than it was. But
my sense of relief there was huge.
Yeah.
The only thing that was more like greater sense of relief I felt in the whole show when that kid popped up out of the bath was in the last episode when I've been waiting since the beginning of the last episode. Like, all right, like they got the guy. There's been enough twists for this to be the resolution, but there's 45 minutes to an hour left here, so we have to have another twist coming. And then I'm like, okay, we're going back to this guy's house. I know in the back of my head we had not resolved the thing about how, it was done with an old cop's gun, and Mary, your dad would have one. I'm like, the twist is going to be that it was Siobhan somehow. And I was like, please tell me we're not heading here. Please tell me we're not heading here. And I'm like, oh, good, it's Laurie's son.
I really like Siobhan. I thought I'm a fan of that actress.
It wasn't even that I like Siobhan. I was like, that's less contrived. Was what my relief was about.
It is technically better, that I mean, it's still a bit of a reach, like I'm going to murder somebody to keep this family together. I'm 13 years old. It's a bit of a reach.
Yeah.
I thought it worked.
He meant to just scare her.
Right, of course.
The biggest reach for me there is that his dad, whose affair with another woman he had already uncovered once, still left his phone unlocked while conducting this affair with his second cousin.
Yeah, I mean, when you get right down to it, I think emotionally, I liked what was happening with
Exactly.
the mystery.
Yeah.
But brass tacks of it all, yeah, it's a bit much, really. Which
Yeah, and you get one or two of those contrivances in any mystery. Like it's fine that not everybody is criminal geniuses.
And yeah, it's sort of the thing for an HBO murder show. You're going to have something. It can't just be. Well, we thought it was the priest, and it was the priest. You can't do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, something like this is coming, especially when things resolve in the first 10 minutes of the last episode.
The other question to that is that obviously we have to cycle through all these different suspects, but it almost serves to exonerate people when it's like, oh,
Right.
Mare's ex-husband is like the first suspect that we're pointing towards. Like, too early in the season for that. The priest came up, I was like, okay, he must have something shady in his past, but it's too early in the season for him to be the real bad guy here. So that must be its own thing. Anyway, we both like this show. I just wanted to sort of air those thoughts that I didn't see anybody else really bumping up against. And maybe we can revisit this in some form, because I'm interested in whether we really are done with the anti-hero thing, and this is just something that doesn't even really fit that mold, or whether it's coming back in some way.
Well, it's well suited for television, and I think you're always going to have it. What's that show you like, Mr. In Between? Is that
Mr. In Between? Yeah.
That's an anti-hero, right?
Yeah. Well.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah.
But that's a whole other thing. Maybe we do an episode about that if the last season's really good. I'd actually, one of the more interesting ways it's sort of coming back, actually in a sort of PG rated way for movies. Now we're not even doing anti-heroes. We're just doing that villain. Maybe they're actually the good guy. Like, there's going to be like a sequel to the Joker movie. Like there's a Cruella de Vil movie coming out. We had Maleficent. Like
already
Disney,
been a
maybe
sequel.
Yeah, right. There's been 2 of those, and maybe that's just a
that bums me out. I got to say,
its own IP.
Yeah, they're cannibalizing their.
It's running out of heroes to reboot, so it's like, let's just do about the villains. But it's becoming its own cultural thing.
They have great villains, is the thing. But kind of what's great about the villains is their theatrical villainy. So when you make them not villains anymore, that ruins it for me, because otherwise, if they're not villains, they're just big stupid characters. It's kind of right. If we're supposed to be on board with Maleficent, then you need to make a character for her. Like, you can't just be what she is anymore. She's got to be something else entirely, essentially. And I may or may not be interested in that, but it's an uphill battle because I already like the original thing that was a villain.
Yeah.
And so that's probably why I'm not going to see the Cruella film, even though it's supposed to be pretty good.
Yeah, I've heard some good things about it. I just never thought, I wish that character had more layers.
Yeah, exactly. I think it is a zero-sum game ultimately. I mean, are they stuck into doing Cruella 2 if it does well now, or do they got to
I think so.
Yeah. I mean, I guess do they make a Gaston movie? Do they make a Jafar? You know what? I'll see. Make a sympathetic Jafar movie. I'm in. See how you do that.
That might be the one that's most plausible to me, I guess, or maybe Scar. No, not. But Jafar, like, okay, this kingdom is in the hands of a dangerous dunce, and I can do better. I can see that as an angle versus I want to make a coat out of puppies. Like,
yeah,
because I like coats.
Can't get on board with Cruella.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
I don't know.
So anyway, I prefer anti-heroes to just straight up villain.
Okay, we're like creating a whole new episode here, so we got to stop this. This is a Mare of Easttown episode, and we finished it. All right. I don't know. I might cut all this. Yeah.
No, that's a fundamental question of this episode, though. Is Mare an anti-hero? Or is she just a hero?
She's just a hero.
Okay. Well, my commitment to social justice is greater than yours, so ha.
All right, that's it.
Good night, man.
Good night.